Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Shakti, and today we are going to be looking at Adele's human design. Now, before we jump into her human design, I want to give a little bit of a backstory about why I wanted to come live and I wanted to do her design at all. Now, I was on Instagram minding my own business recently, and a page that I follow shared a clip of hers and something she said at like an award show. And this is not the first time I have heard Adele speak, especially on subjects about like her life and the things that she's done. But this particular clip really caught my attention. And I immediately wanted to throw out a guess as to her aura type and her design. And I was right. And and then I was like, okay, I want to come on and do her chart. And now I want to preface this whole conversation by saying if you're brand new to me, you don't know my work, I have been a human design analyst now for several years. I've been studying human design since 2016. And what I really work on the most with my clients is success. So, profession, career, entrepreneurship with the human design world. So, I am not a follow the stars kind of person. I do not have celebrity favorites. I am not that person by any stretch of the imagination. But I love the study of humans. I'm fascinated by humans and the things that they choose to say and do and why they do them. And so when I come across a public figure that I find to be really interesting and truly kind of exemplifying their design, I like to make a little event of it to teach about human design by way of these examples. Human design, if you're not familiar with it as a system, is a really profound system that teaches us about how we are individuals. How are we put together? How does our energy flow? How are we designed to operate in this world with minimum resistance and maximum optimization? And it really supports individuals in getting to know not just who they are, but how they came here to shine and really leave a mark. So, a little over a year ago, I did one of these for Taylor Swift for a similar reason. Not that I'm a huge fan, not that I listen to all of her music, but because she is to me such a really good example of her design, and she's really played up these key components of her design well. And in my opinion, Adele has also done that. And I was really excited to share about her chart. So if you are an Adele fan, you'll find this fascinating. If you're not an Adele fan, you'll still find it fascinating because you're going to learn things about human design that you can take away, go back to your own chart, see if you can find these points of connection in your own alignment, in your own energy field. And if you're watching this and you're like, this is fascinating, I'd love to know more, you're more than welcome to go ahead and visit my site and you can book a clarity call with me. And so what this will do for you is it'll help you figure out what's the best way for you to start your human design journey and what is my personal recommendation for that. So phoenixlegacy.com and we can get started on yours. All right, so I'm going to first pull up. I'm going to share something different first because I want to share this video of hers. So let me see if I can do that. Hopefully I can. Okay.
And I don't think that many people know this. They might know that I have a child and that I'm my mum, but my son is 11 years old, right? So if you do the math, that means that right at the height of 21, I can only call it pandemonium because that's how it felt to me. Overnight, it was like I was famous. It was the strangest, most surreal experience of my life still to this day. I fell pregnant. And to many, that would be, and it was, considered career suicide. However, always one to go against the grain. It was there and then that I chose to reject the scarcity of success and the idea that you have to be constantly relevant to be successful. and that perhaps, just maybe, I could be a hit both on and off the stage, and you'll never guess what? Fucking got away with it. And why? Because of all the sacrifices that the women before me have made, it's because of them that I have every right to be the boss at work and the boss at home. So thank you.
All right. Such a good clip of her in her herness. Were y'all able to hear that? Hopefully you were. So when she said this line of always one to go against the grain, I was like, I bet Adele's a manifestor. I was right. Because this is a distinguishing characteristic of being a manifestor, is having this ability to know what needs to change and know what needs to be different and to go against the grain and create that, which I absolutely love that she said. And I was so excited after that. I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to do her chart because I'm sure it's going to be full of just like power moments, which it is. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and find her chart again, so I can bring it back on screen. All right. Please say hello as you're hopping on. All right. So here we have her chart. I'm going to have a pointer going in the event that I want to highlight certain things. So again, if you're brand new to human design and you're like, I don't know anything about design, I have a free chart generator on my website. It's phoenixlegacy.com. Just like I showed you on that scroll on the bottom, and you can get not only can you get a free chart, but you can also get a free video. You can get a free video where I talk to you about your aura type, which is the first thing we're going to be talking about here is type. And it gives you a lot of really good information straight out of the gate. So phoenixlegacy.com, get your chart and learn about your aura type. Now, the first thing we're going to notice about Adele's chart is that her type is manifestor. And I'm going to kind of be switching back and forth so that I did not want to do that one. That is not a very good highlighting tool, is it? All right, so her type is the manifestor type. Manifestor types are only 9% of the population, so they're actually a pretty rare aura type. And this is an aura that operates in a very interesting mechanism because it has this closed aura to it. It's not a warm and fuzzy aura. It can't be because it's designed to lead. It's designed to be a pioneering aura. It's designed to be a trailblazing aura. So when you have someone that is designed to be a trailblazer, that's designed to be a pioneer, they have to have a sort of built-in protection mechanism to their aura so that other people can't necessarily get in and interfere with that aura. So oftentimes the manifestor aura is described as closed and repelling. It's not really it's not meant to be repelling. It just can be. Okay? That closedness about it is a protection mechanism for the manifestor itself. It's made this way to protect the manifestor. Now, other people, when they come in contact with an aura that of a manifestor, can often be quite taken aback by it. They can find it to be too much, too pushy, presumptuous, hard around the edges. They just reject it. They reject the manifestor aura a lot. I've seen this a lot in interactions with manifestors because manifestors are really like a self-contained island. And especially when a manifestor understands this about themselves and they're an empowered manifestor, they really don't give a fuck what anybody is thinking or doing around them. They are operating in their own field, moving when they feel called, and if you are lucky, they are telling you ahead of time where they're going. And if you are not, then they're just going to bulldoze you over with their energy because they are moving at their own rhythm. They are not really minding other people, especially when they're unaware. An aware manifestor understands that they have to inform people around them, the people that are going to be impacted by their choices, about what's coming next, because this reduces the friction in their relationship and it allows them to have a little bit of more ease of movement and function in the world. But if a manifestor isn't aware of that, then they're not going to behave that way. And it's very much going to feel kind of like a bulldozer doing its own thing the way that it wants to. Now, the fact that this is Adele's aura type is I think she's a classic manifestor in this performance and behavior. She's very strong-willed. She absolutely will not do whatever, a recording studio or whatever asks her to do. She's going to do what she fucking wants to do. And she decided that she didn't have to be relevant all the time to be successful. And she decided that she could be a mom and she could be a badass, a celebrity, and she made it happen. She said it in the video herself. She's like, guess what? I fucking got away with it. Because she did. Because she just decided that she was going to get away with it. And I love that about her energy. And I love that she was so decidedly committed to having it her way. And of course it worked out that way. Of course it did. In many ways, I see Adele as being a very strong pioneer about what's for success, because she has been someone who's been around for a long time, but she hasn't produced a fuck ton of albums. In fact, in that video, she says she's produced like 4, which is decidedly less than most people who have been around as long as she has. But she just didn't want all of that pressure. She wanted to have a very specific kind of relationship to success and to her kids, and she made it happen the way she wanted. And so I think that she very much embodies that energy of being a pioneer and being an initiator in her world, in her realm. The other thing about the manifestor aura is that it's very much about move when moved. Okay, so this idea that of all the aura types, the only type that really moves at its own pace is the manifestor. The manifestor has its own sense of internal timing. And when it feels like it needs to move, it does. And if it doesn't feel called to move, then it won't. It's a very efficient and effective use of resources type of aura. It's focused on the results that it wants to accomplish, and it's not going to just give out energy if it's not needed. Okay. Again, this manifestor aura, we are looking at an aura that does not have a defined sacral, the center right here. So because it doesn't have a defined sacral, it doesn't have this consistent regenerating life force energy that just can go on and on and on. It really doesn't have that. So she needs to be very selective about where she's putting her energy and how she's using her energy. And she's going to decide that based on her own internal creative flow. That's how she's going to decide what's best for her. That's how she's meant to decide that. Okay. As an awakened manifestor, you would see her being someone who recognizes that her actions are going to affect certain people, and she will inform them about what she wants to do next or where she wants to go next. And this way it can, like I said, ease the impact of her movement in the world. I'm going to erase as I go along so I don't super confused. She is also an emotional authority. And this is particularly significant for Adele because she is an emotional manifestor connected by the channel of 1222. So this, I'm going to change the color of this so it maybe stands out a little bit more. This channel right here, the 12 connecting the 22. This is connecting her emotional center to her throat. Okay. And she also has a connection in her throat. This being important because she's a singer, she's a vocalist, through the 20 and the 10. Okay, but we're going to talk about this one first, the 12 and the 22. This one I think we probably hear the most in her music. One thing that Adele is very much known for is being a super emotional vocalist, right? Her songs have this emotional anchoring. They pull up these feelings from the base of your soul. They tend to be very activating in the way that they tell stories. She just has this way about communicating stories that is very emotional. And this channel, the 1222, is all about that. It's about this magnetism, this charisma that arises from being able to gracefully share these emotional stories at the right time with the right people that move people. It has this grace about it. And her songs, even the ones that are quite dark and quite like painful, they do have this like undertone of grace with them that I find to be like really profound and beautiful. And so that's something that when I saw that in her chart, I was like, that makes perfect sense. She is an emotional authority. She will need time to get to clarity. And she will also be someone that really speaks from that emotional center and often will produce things that are quite raw and quite stimulating emotionally as a result of her own activation. She also has her throat, right, defined. She has a consistent way of speaking and showing up. This is an individual that no matter what room she's in, who she's around, or what she's up against, she's always going to sound quite the same. Okay. Her voice will always have that same melodic kind of quality. She will be able to consistently use her voice in a way that feels aligned. It doesn't matter if she's being interviewed by these people or these people, she's likely going to sound the same because she is very much consistently herself in her ability to use her voice. Now, her voice is also activated and connected to her identity center through the channel 2010. Now, one thing that I see of people who have this channel is that they are moved to act or speak based on this set of standards, self-loving and self-honoring standards that they carry within themselves, especially when they're awakened to this quality in their being. I'm gonna take a coffee break. So, the gate 10 being about my own behavior, correct behavior of self, aligned behavior in the moment. Is this correct for me? Is this honoring my boundaries? Is this honoring my self-love? Is this honoring myself, my sense of identity? And then making choices to move and act or speak in a way that reflects that. Again, we see that in her music, but definitely in her life. She has made a lot of choices, and I know very little about her life. In preparation for this, I didn't want to like fill my mind with too much of her information, but there have been a lot of pivotal moments in her life where she had to step away from things or change her lifestyle or whatever because they weren't self-loving and they weren't serving her, and she recognized that. So this is something that she will consistently do all of her life, and that is correct for her to do. It's a way of kind of reinventing herself and finding herself. So I found those particular activations to be really fascinating because she's a vocalist and she uses her voice, and because I feel like we hear these themes in her music a lot. She also has a 2644, which connects the ego center through the spleen. I find that this channel tends to be a very influential channel. It tends to be a pretty good salesperson in terms of like selling progress or an idea or concepts to the other. Someone who is almost, it's like they're like influential without necessarily meaning to be. They just are by their sheer presence. When they champion certain ideas or concepts for the progress or the betterment of people, others tend to listen to them. If I'm not mistaken, Taylor Swift also shares this channel. I am like kind of thinking back to when I did her live. I want to say that she does. Now I want to go look. So these are some of the initial key things that, and also I just want to say this, there's a lot of information in this chart. We're not going to get to all of it. I want to make this video short and entertaining and interesting and kind of give you some insight into the kind of information that you can get from human design, but there will be a lot more information that we can extract from her chart that would take a while more to do. Okay. Other things I really noticed about her chart that I found fascinating and really true to what I know of her. Her motivation is innocence. This is really interesting to me because I do find that she is someone who doesn't strive to be a role model. She doesn't actually try to be anything. She just shows up and is herself, and people just see her as being a role model. And that's very much an innocence motivation concept. Her perspective is self-centered. I do see that she is quite more interested in like her own journey and her own work, and she really tries to stay away from getting caught up in other people's drama and what other people are doing or saying or how they are behaving in any way. She has a 2-5 profile. I'm erasing as I go along so we don't get confused. What I find really interesting about this is that her conscious profile line is a 2. And these are people who by nature are quite hermetic. They like their privacy. 2-line profile people like their privacy, and they need their privacy in order to really show up as their genius self. 2-line people, so if you have a 2 in your profile, also tend to have this natural genius about them. Something that isn't studied or worked on or, practiced. It's really just an organic genius that they carry. And I think for Adele, that's crazy obvious. Like, she is this bananas vocalist, and this is her natural, brilliant talent. But she's also really private. She's really kept to herself. We've seen that in her story. We've seen that in the way that she is a mother and in the way that she's really tried to keep her like celebrity status kind of away from her kids and from being a mom. She really highly values her privacy and her quiet time. She's also has an unconscious 5-line in her profile, which is a very activating profile line. So what's fascinating about Adele's profile lines is that both the 2 and the 5-line have projection fields. The 2-line has an internal projection field where it really struggles to see itself. And the 5-line has an outer projection field where other people outside of her really struggle to see her. So this can look like feeling misunderstood a lot. And we can sort of see some of that thematic in like her relationship and the drama that she's undergone in her marriage and all of this kind of stuff. Her imagining that, that someone feels a certain kind of way about her when in reality they don't, right? Like, she has so many songs like this, right? Like feeling like double crossed or feeling like, I was so invested in you and you were not invested in me. And this is like a very much a double projection field, I feel like, experience. So again, fascinating how these pieces of her design show up in her music. And I doubt that Adele knows her human design, but I just want to give you guys evidence as to how these pieces of our design really show up in the work that we do in the world, whether we are aware of it or not. Now, the key is, can we be aware of it and can we use it to our benefit versus being lost in a sea of like chaos? Because, for example, people with a double projection field have a really hard time understanding themselves and understanding their relationship to other people. So they end up in a lot of really problematic relationships on and off all of the time because they don't understand what's happening. They don't understand this dynamic. They don't understand how they can misperceive others or others can misperceive them so readily. Okay. So as a 5-line also, though, she is, this problem solver for other people. She is a visionary. She is a leader. She's an activator of other people. She activates other people in a very specific way. The 2-line is very selective. It's a very specific activation. So the people who really love her and love her music and feel moved by her music, she solves some kind of emotional turmoil for them in a very particular manner with her voice and with her singing style. And she's very effective at that. She's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Like if she was a 5-1 profile, she would be likely far more preferred and accepted. But the people who do love her hard and really find a benefit in her work and what she offers the world. All right, I'm going to come back here and, okay. What else do I find really fascinating for her? I'm doing a very cold reading too because I just pulled up her chart. I didn't really want to think too much about her chart. I just wanted to kind of show up and do this like on the fly. So she is someone who has an open head and mind. And so this is someone who's constantly pulling inspiration from the ethers, is like very readily inspired by the things that they see and hear. And they like to have a flexible mind. Yeah, so someone wrote in the comments, Madonna and Britney Spears are 5-1 profiles. This is a really good example of two artists who are more universally accepted or appreciated because they have a universal profile, right? That 5-1 makes them like a solution for more people than a 2-5 or a 5-2. So thank you. That's a really good example. I can't see your name, so if you could share it, that'd be great. So I could thank you. So she has an open-headed mind. She likes to be flexibly minded. She is someone who's constantly pulling inspiration from the world around her. And though the shadow side of this kind of organization as well is that she can also be affected by the opinions of others and the perspective of others. And she kind of, hi Kelly Lynn, thank you. She kind of alludes to that in some of her interviews. Like, I haven't watched an interview of hers in a really long time. Not the one that I played earlier in this video, but before that. She kind of alludes to people getting in her head, like early on in the industry, and her having to kind of fight for her voice and the way that she wanted to show up in the world, you know. And then her body too was like a point of interest. Like, people were making comments about her body and what she should look like. And that really affected her. So this open-headed mind thing can be really beautiful in a person because it makes them really open-minded and flexibly minded, but it can also be really challenging because depending on who you're around, you could kind of take on the opinions and perspectives of other people and drown out your own internal knowing. And that can be, you know, difficult, especially when you're in a position where like someone like Adele is, which is really high pressure, really high stakes, and you have a lot of people pouring in money into you and invested in your success. And you have to hold it down, you know, and not let yourself be swayed. That can be really challenging. All right, let's go back to her chart and look at some other things. She has an undefined sacral and an undefined root. So right here, you have the design of an individual that is not meant to be working all of the time. And she talks about that very candidly. She's not meant to be producing albums all the freaking time. She's not meant to be on stage all the freaking time. She's not built for that constant state of pressure or performance or being on. She also doesn't have an interest in it. And she's talked about that openly. And that's correct for her because when you have a design like this, you don't have a really consistent way of handling stress. Like the adrenals don't really have a consistent way of being experienced. And so you could easily burn out, very easily burn out. And I don't know if she's talked about burning out in her career. Again, I know very little about Adele, but if you know a lot about Adele, then you will know the answer to this. But it can lead, if someone's not paying attention to these qualities of self, it can lead to burnout. All right. I'm going to go back to her chart. Now, where is she defined? She is defined in her throat, which we talked about, in her identity center, in her ego center, her emotional center, and in her spleen. So very interesting things to note about Adele's chart is that she is someone who has, like I said, a consistent voice, a consistent way of speaking and moving in the world. She also has a strong sense of self. Her identity center, that diamond center, is defined. So she has a strong sense of self and she understands who she is. And that doesn't change based on the environment that she's put in. She has a defined ego center, which is the small triangle over here. This is actually an anomaly. You know, 30% of the population have this defined, so not a lot of people do. So she does have a strong sense of worth, like innate sense of worth and motivation. And I think you see that too in her interviews, the way she talks about, you know, leaving toxic experiences or relationships or, you know, shutting things down that weren't a good fit for her. She's very candid about that. And she has a, you know, people with a defined ego have a very strong nature to them. She's a manifestor with a defined ego. So that's double strength, you know, in her presence, in her aura. But she also has this way with material security where she doesn't see anything wrong with having material success and using material success in a way that feels good to you. She also has a defined spleen, so she has strong sense of instinct, strong sense of intuition, consistent way of accessing her intuition and her instincts, and a defined emotional center, which we talked about earlier. And this motor, this emotional center, is really what gives her voice that very distinct quality that we all know Adele for. Whether you like Adele or you don't like Adele, you know her voice. It is super emotional. It is super activating emotionally, and that's very on par for her design. So we are right at 30 minutes. And like I said, I wanted to keep this short. Some final notes that I will say about her design that I haven't yet covered that would be interesting to look more about is that she is not quite yet in her midlife. We're going to see her transitioning into the midlife August 2032. This is the Uranus opposition time. She is a year younger than I am. And so she's still kind of living in these South Node experiences, which her themes for the South Node are concepts about intimacy and friction, which is very much a note that we notice in the themes of her songs, but also about, you know, repeating mistakes from the past, not, mindset and oppression around her thoughts. So her mind and moving away from the oppressive cycles of mind and understanding that where her mind is what's going to orient her reality. So this is a learning that she's doing right now in her South Node. And as she switches over into her North Node, I would expect, like, this is kind of like a little, maybe a predictive thing we might start hearing in her music, is that there's going to be much more about strength in crisis, understanding how to hold yourself even when you're going through something really difficult and it feels like your world is falling apart. There's going to be an emphasis maybe on grace, on finding grace, on living in grace. These elements in her music we might be hearing more of, because these are the ones that are going to be standing out in her life as she transitions into that midlife. So I'm very curious to see how her music will shift and adapt in accordance. So that is a bit about Adele's human design chart. There is obviously so much more information and so many different planetary influences, but like I said, I wanted to keep this short and sweet. If you found this inspiring and you're like, I would love to learn about this in relationship to my own chart, phoenixlegacy.com is right there below. And until April 7th, I'm actually enrolling for a program called Design to Shine, which will help you move through your entire chart, and it will help you understand how you came here to succeed, how you came here to shine, how you came here to use all these elements of your chart that I just went through in Adele's chart for yourself, so that you can really be the best version of yourself and operate in the world in that frequency and energy. Yeah, I love Adele's chart. It's so strong. It's so powerful. I love her interviews. I feel like every time I watch her talk, I can just hear her power, how unapologetic she is, how of a force she is in her world. And I deeply appreciate that about her and every manifestor, because I feel like I'm blessed to be surrounded by so many manifestors that are really that example in the world. And the rest of us need that example of what it means to be a trailblazer in our power, in our energy, fully embodied. And so, yeah, many thanks to Adele and to the other manifestors who will watch this, who are living their truth, because my projector self is grateful for that example. All right, my friends, until we meet again, love you all. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you follow and subscribe, and hit me up and let's chat at thephoenixlegacy.com.